Welcome to Inside Photo Organizing, from DIY to Pro, with Allison Friedman from Arrange Wander Focus of Chicago, Illinois. And I am Susan Wallach from Save a Memory of Northern Colorado. Together, we will provide photo organizing tips and tricks for everyone from the person who wants to do it yourself to other pros in our industry. We'll discuss current software and hardware news about photo and digital asset management. We will be answering your questions, and we hope that as you learn more, you can complete your own photo organizing project and feel more confident to finally know, hey, I can find that special photo that I've been looking for. Good morning, Allison.
Good morning, Susan. Happy winter.
Yes, it's been interesting. In Colorado, we've had all sorts of cold weather, warm weather, snow, a little snow, lots of snow. We're all over the place this year.
Well, we're in the middle of a deep freeze, and I have to say I wasn't thrilled to come back from my nice holiday vacation on the beach and on the equator to come back to -11 with a feels like of -28. I also will apologize for my voice today, which is a little bit hoarse. So Susan and our guest Jill are going to do more of the talking. But I'm thrilled to be here. I'm super excited to take off in the new year and get us going.
For sure. And I am so excited to get to interview one of my previous masterclass coaches. So I got to know and a little bit about her and learn some of her backstory and her great approach to her business. I should say businesses. So we wanted to bring her on and ask her a few questions. She's got lots of experience in a variety of services that she offers now. And so she's just stitching them all together in a lovely way that we're going to learn about. So I want to welcome Jill to our podcast today.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Allison. I was so touched when you invited me to be a part of your show. I think it's a great podcast, and I like your questions. I love the answers, and I just love the interplay that you guys have with each other. So my name is Jill Yesko Diana, and I am the founder and president. Those are my big titles from Discover Organizing, which I started 20 years ago, a little more than that now. And I started out as a residential organizer back then and a photo organizer, which was an unheard of term, but that's what I called myself. And then a few years later, I started doing move management for seniors. And therefore, I'm a member of many organizations. And one of them, of course, is the Photo Managers Association. And that's how I met you both. And I'm lucky to have done so. And my background before that was social work and human resources. And the very quick story on that is that I started out as a case manager right out of school. I went to Villanova, graduated, 100 years ago. As my kids think, I was still wearing, high button shoes and long dresses. But Villanova was actually a co-ed school, and it wasn't at the time. My father and his brother and his uncles went there. It was all male school. So I'm the only girl person, as a lot of us would say back then when we were all the females walking around at the school. Relatively, if you think about it, I was going to college in the 80s, and only recently, I'd say in the last decade before that, women were permitted in. So it was interesting that the numbers were still heavily stacked in my favor to go to a co-ed school. So it was kind of a fun college time. But long story short, I went to Villanova for my social work degree, and soon realized I wanted to be an administrator. I loved case management, and I loved finding solutions for people, I think, which is, kind of what makes being a professional organizer so fulfilling, is because we always find solutions, and we do so creatively. But the administration side really helped me going into HR, kind of morphing into HR and a clinical background. I was the director of HR for a psychiatric hospital. And I did that right before I started this business. And there's so much clerical work in HR. It's 80% paperwork. I always say 20% people. So thank God I had the people training back before I started doing HR, or I wouldn't have been ready to do what I do now.
Yeah, and
Nice.
just to make sure everybody heard, because we've had a lot of photo organizers on our podcast, but you do a lot more than that. And I just want to make sure that's clear, because you actually started, at least for this part of the business, you said, as a residential organizer. So what does that mean?
So basically what that means is we go into homes and we do a thorough, like, 360 assessment of the home and the person. We create goals around that person's, lifestyle, what they want their environment to feel like, what they want it to look like. We define what organization means to them, because it might be different than what it means to their next door neighbor or their mom. And we just start prioritizing and working in the environment to meet those goals. And sometimes that takes years, sometimes that takes months, and sometimes that takes a few days, depending on the size of the project. But what we always found were photos, everywhere. So I just started kind of incorporating that, actually that fall of 2003, when I was doing somebody's home and their home office. She was a lawyer. She still is. She's my lawyer now. But she was one of the first people that hired me. And I remember her saying, I just need help in my law office, but I work from home. And I said, okay. She had her own law firm. And, put those papers in order. And because I had the business background and the HR background, I was able to know, not just how to categorically file something, but just all the compliance issues that go along with the law and things like that. But then she would say, well, now that we've done this, can I take you and have you take a look at my mess, my main bedroom closet? And I was like, sure. And she goes, oh, I have, an issue with t-shirts. I'm like, okay, let's talk. And then we were in the basement, and then we were in, all these other parts. Then we were doing the garage. And then I said, I noticed you have a lot of loose photographs. I always say that, by the way. That's one of my big, I guess I'm giving away a secret, but I always say, I've noticed this and I've noticed that. And that leads to really good conversations, but it also is a great way for me to increase my sales.
Right.
When I notice things. And that also helps them to know that I'm paying attention to what I'm seeing and how we can improve some of the areas that they've brought to my attention, or maybe that they haven't yet.
Nice. So, when you have morphed into all these other positions, and I can relate. I know what my background is.
Yeah.
You take what you've done in previous ones, and then you're like, okay, what else what else can I do? What else is going to ring my bell? So when you said you got into the photo organizing, you didn't just get in. I mean, like, now you are an agency that often helps other photo managers. You're at that level now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, knowing that people's memories needed to be put in order and have it weigh as much as their personal belongings, because how many times have we heard the interviews after a fire or flood from people saying, I lost all of my memories. I've lost all of those things. I should have done this. I should have done that. And so I think early on, just recognizing that I would charge as much for organizing photos as I would to organize your basement, kind of was a lot for people to wrap their heads around, because while they weighed it heavily emotionally, they didn't necessarily put value on it financially to pay me to do that. And I would say, well, I'm still organizing, I'm still using my skill set. In fact, in a much more finite way. And, in the sense that we're kind of taking that nitty gritty, that small, micro part of your personal life and making it tangible and enjoyable. Because I always say, you didn't take those pictures to have them move under your bed, did you? You know, and they're like, no. And I'm like, well, that's where I found them, along with a few socks and, you know, some shoes and some candy wrappers and, you know, whatever else I found under there. I don't want to get into, but, you know, I said, this is where some of your most precious memories are. This is your history. You know, what do you want to do with this? And I'm like, I want to do something with that. So yeah, you know, now what I do is I do a lot of coaching and mentoring of other photo managers. I've given presentations at the conference, as well as virtually, just because I want other professional people to feel, I'd say, the emotional success from this career. There is financial success, to be sure, but not as much as the fulfillment I get from, you know, making a book for someone, having it come in the mail and, you know, opening that spine for the first time and seeing all of those hours of me selecting photographs with them and finding the words for their stories with them and bringing, you know, life to their pages. It's really cool. And pages to their life, really.
I love that phrase, emotional success. And I think we feel it just as much as our clients do. You know, when we
Yes.
hand back
Yeah.
you know, we take their mess that's all over the place and we essentially hand them back their phone and say, yep, here it all is right here. Just press this button. I mean, they light up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And that's so fulfilling. So I love that phrase. I'm not sure I've thought about it in that way before.
Well, and there's been moments, you know, you guys were, you know, we've had a lot of dark days here at Discover Organizing when the recession was going on and when COVID was happening. And, you know, photo organizing saved us all, saved my company. I mean, from, I feel, you know, ruined sometimes because during COVID, what we could do were the porch drop-offs and pickups, and people still wanted to work with us, which I was so grateful for, because they figured this was a no-touch solution, but we could still do Zoom, we could still do phone, we could still connect with each other. And then it gave them a great time to talk about their memories. And this was a project they could do while they were cooped up. And it gave us purpose to come in every day to work. And you know, we weren't making any income from the other two parts of our business at all.
Right.
And
How could
so,
you do that? You can't go in people's homes and interact with them at that level. Yeah.
no, how are you going to pack up somebody's house, you know, move somebody or declutter or deconstruct a home or whatever, you know, when you have to be within 2 or 3 feet of them to ask questions. So, you know, most of our clients are, you know, older and they do need us to be hands-on. So, you know, we couldn't, the virtual organizing works only so far, you know, in those scenarios. So this was just the perfect path for us during those times. And, you know, we went through the recession when I had an organizing retail store from 2007 to 2010. I mean, my God, you know, that was like one of the worst times in our history, our economic, you know, history in my lifetime anyway. And just thank God I was able to get out and, you know, do photo work and do like projects. And I still taught photo classes in the back of my store, and people came every week and they worked on albums. They worked on sorting their memories. And it was just a beautiful thing to do during a really kind of dark time financially. So
So
it's
if you have the room, why, you know, why not keep all this stuff, you know? So, you know, some photo organizers are really into culling people's collections. So, you know, only digitizing the ones with the people in it. So what's your approach? You know, do you let them keep it all, or do you encourage them to, you know, only keep the best?
Well, one of the things that I do, you know, I do here, by the way, is, you know, Jill, I have this, you know, 4,000 square foot home. So I kept collecting because I could. I had the space because you would walk into these homes and you would not see what you define as clutter. You would see decor, you would see memorabilia, you would see beautiful furniture and rugs and lighting and, curated rooms. But then you go down to the basement or up in the attic or, the far reaches of the house. And then you started seeing, more decor, more lighting, more things in storage, more things. And there'd still be space to walk around in these great rooms, and they'd say, I got all this because I could, and we had the money. And that's how it came in. But then I said, well, do you have too much stuff to be happy? And the answer is, well, yeah, that's why I called you. And I said, well, how do we get to happiness in this house? And it really comes down to time management to me. And then eventually they see it that way too, because the more stuff you have, the more time you have to spend managing that stuff. And, whether the more you bring in, you're going to have to make decisions about when it's going. Even if you're not doing the one in, one out rule that's very famous and popular in the organizing culture, you still have to deal with the bulk of the things, if not today, then someday. And it just weighs on people. It's almost like a mental health thing because it's there. It's waiting for you in that storage room that you rented the last time you moved. It's still sitting there and you might be paying $300 and $400 a month for that. So there are costs, not just financial costs, but also costs, so I approach it that way. I talk about how much time and money do they want to save versus what they're spending now, so we can make it tangible. And then I talk about the priorities, like how we do ABC photo sorting. I talk to them about, what in this house are your A's. And we have an exercise we do. And I tell them that they have 3 hours to get out of their house. I give them a piece of paper and a pen. And I say, you have 3 hours to get out of your house. You have a Ford Fiat car, Mini Cooper, if you will, not even a four-door. And what are you taking with you? And your loved ones and pets are safe. And they're like, and they write it down. We have to write it down.
Fascinating approach.
And then you have a Ford Explorer and one person helping you load it. In addition to what's in the Fiat, what's going in that? And they go, oh, okay. And a couple more pieces of art, some jewelry. Photographs are always number one, by the way. They always go in the Fiat. Any albums, they said, I'll stack up every single album I have, even if I haven't digitized it. I'll put that in the little car. And medicine, which is good because memories are medicine sometimes. And then the third one is, okay, you have all day, 2 helpers and a 20-foot box truck. And then we get very good at prioritizing how we're going to be doing our decluttering and organizing of the home. So, and I do that to a 25-year-old, just like I do it to an 85-year-old. So it has nothing to do with age, but that exercise really helps them prioritize what's important to them.
I love that approach. One of our questions for you is actually, what advice would you give to someone who feels overwhelmed by clutter? And I feel like you just answered it already, because think about, when it comes down to it, if you only have your little Fiat and I forget what you said, an hour or whatever it is, what would you take? And that's how you can start, I think, getting rid of the overwhelm is it gives you a strategy to determine what is most important to you.
For sure.
And that would apply to stuff. And that does apply to photos as well. If you're overwhelmed by digital clutter, it doesn't work exactly the same way, but it's similar.
Yeah. And a lot of us can recall those photos, those, at least the moments, and that helps us kind of track down the photo. Sometimes if we don't have them organized, we can kind of at least remember, well, that was for my 50th birthday. And then my husband took me to Hawaii. So I can try to find that, but the digital overwhelm is astronomical. I think people just don't even want to begin anymore because it's just too big. And it's our job, I think, as a photo manager to create that plan of prioritization. And again, what are you putting in that tiniest car? What do you have the least amount of time? But I also ask them this when I teach my classes and when I do one-on-one coaching with them, I always say, are the things in your home reflective of who you are right now? Because this is all we have, really, is this moment today. What are we doing today? What are we doing in the next couple of days? This is our present person. And how are we reflecting that in our home? And I find a lot of people are thinking, that maybe their best days are behind them instead of in front of them. So they're holding on to many things that they used to be. Like a young mother who's now in her 60s, in her mind, those were her happiest times as a young mother. So those artifacts from those days, are archived in the basement or somewhere. And there's a lot of them, there's a lot of those things. And so what our job is, as I believe, photo managers or memory managers too, in the sense that, and I believe this might have been one of your questions, but, how do you kind of marry the two, like the photo organizing and, to help with decluttering and residential organizing. And what I try to do is using the photo book as a great example, as I say, let's make a photo book of your favorite things. As we release them, I want you to tell me a story of them, and I'm going to make them look really good in the photo book. It's going to look like a book from, the Met or MoMA or some like New York, really, it's going to have a white background and you're going to have this beautiful object and you're going to tell the story to the right or the left of it or above it. And we're going to, really hear about what this object means to you. And the releasing that they can do after they do that is almost 100%. And it's very rare that say, no, 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 I want it back. Because all we need to really do is share the meaning behind the object, because there's always a reason we're holding on to something.
Oh, for sure. Somebody
No.
gave it to you. You picked it up in a special place.
Yeah.
Yeah. All that. I used to think at some point in my life that because I have moved a lot, especially when I was in my 20s and having to rent different places. I think I moved 12 times in 6 years. And, some were a quick turnaround because another place wasn't available or whatever. So I think when people don't move in their life, they settle
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
That is almost harder. I remember I lived on Maui for 12 years. And when I sold everything and packed up the belongings I wanted to bring with me to they call it the mainland, I had 35 boxes. My life was in 35 boxes. And I
Wow.
think 5 of those were photos. So,
Okay. I
you
mean, that is true, Susan, when you are forced to move. I mean, you talk to a military family and they have what they basically need because they know they're going to be buying maybe furniture at the new place or what they
yep.
need to build their home at the new place, but they're bringing mostly their memories and, clothing and the essentials, and they get started in their new place and they get that reset button a lot where a lot of us don't. And I was at a house on Friday that they had their home built for them in 1978, and they've been married a very long time. They're 77 years old each. And as we went room to room, they were like, oh, remember when so and so spilled this on this carpet, and remember when you made this. I remember when I was in labor with the baby and then we did this. And you could tell they were giving me an emotional tour of their home, not just a physical tour of what's going on in the truck, what's going to have to get packed, what's going to have to get sold. And, I think our job as organizers, whether it's photo organizers, residential organizers, move managers, is to listen. And because there's a lot of answers in that initial meeting, and find out, how to slowly approach. And I feel like the approach is always to, listen first, write down all the goals, all the steps, and then figure out what room is going to be the easiest: basement, attic, garage. guest closet, you know, weird closet in back of house, wherever that is, and start there and really prioritize around, those easy decisions and get really good at those decisions. And then your brain's, I always call it your decision-making muscle, which by the way, isn't a real muscle. I'm not a doctor, but I feel like that decision-making muscle just gets stronger and stronger with each workout or organizing session. And by the time we're finished with them, they really do not need us any longer because they've rehearsed so many ways to make that decision that's right for them, whether to keep, toss, sell, donate, or put it in the I don't know area until we can really go through that question again. So,
Right. So have you ever gotten stuck with a client and just couldn't get them to release some stuff and then said, all right, we're going to throw it in this box and you're going to put a date on it. And in, 6 months,
yeah.
if you haven't gotten back to that stuff, then revisit it.
Yes, that can backfire though. We in my earlier days, I did do that. I would say, okay, we're gonna make this box, for your future self, but promise me it's not gonna be a time capsule that you'll find, after my death. But yeah, so we'll date boxes. I have been practicing that for as long as I've been an organizer. I will date a box that they've decided to keep with them, even if it's stuff that is holiday decor or something that would probably get into the mainstream of their home. But they're so funny. They'll call me and be like, yeah, I found your date. I did not go into that box of socks that I thought I needed. So I just took that whole box with the tape on it and I took it right to donation. Where
Nice.
it backfires is when you do have someone that has, hoarding tendencies or chronic disorganization is, well, that's a neat box, and I can just keep stacking other boxes on top of it. And it's nice that it has a date, but that was very sweet of Jill to put that date on that box, but I'm not getting rid of that. So, it really comes down to now that I know better and I can kind of assess and do a non-clinical diagnosis of someone that is experiencing hoarding or chronic disorganization. I can take a different path with that individual versus, someone that might be more neurotypical. And I can just say, okay, we're putting an accountability date on this. So
Right.
it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't.
Well, I was surprised to hear when you were speaking earlier and talking about, how sometimes you can help somebody turn around their clutter in a month or something, but
Mhm.
you also included a year. So have you had clients that you've worked with? Yeah.
Oh yeah, for years. Yeah, we actually, still have clients we got that first month because, you know, if somebody was perfectly organized, they wouldn't be calling us. If somebody usually is not calling us with a situational problem. We have situational disorganization, like after a baby or a life disrupting event, a divorce, someone's passed away and there's grief, that's situational where you're inheriting your mother's stuff and now it's in your garage and you haven't touched it in 5 years because it's too hard to touch. Um, that's a situation. But chronic disorganization is a whole nother ball game because we're looking at just helping people keep their heads above water in terms of paying bills, making sure they're either performing at work to get their paychecks, to having a way to cook a meal, to plan a menu, even in a very micro way to be functional in their home and in the world, so a lot of our clients are regulars because they're not going to come out of that situational disorganization state. They have a maintenance package with us. And sometimes we see them once a week. Sometimes we see them every 2 weeks. Is the bulk of the decluttering done? Yes. But this is how we keep them free from that and keep them feeling peaceful and functional, happy.
Do you find that just the process for your clients of working with you helps them release? I was just thinking about when you talked about you walk around the house and they say, oh, yeah, that's where we, dropped the wine and stained the rug or this or that, or we got this in Morocco or whatever, that sometimes just talking about it to a stranger or somebody you don't know well helps you identify what's important, because you are looking at a whole room full of stuff and you've picked out that vase from Morocco or whatever to tell you about. Do you find that just literally taking the first step of having you come in
Mhm.
helps people start that release process to help
Yeah,
them remove some of that clutter?
I do. I do believe it because now they're admitting that they're going to need assistance to make some decisions. Maybe they've had their adult children in, or even just a family member in, a sister came over, something where, they are also emotionally tied to the object in some way, and want to support the person. But what a professional knows how to do is kind of ask the right questions during the assessment and also listen without judgment during the assessment and not say things like, why are you keeping that? Susan, why are you keeping that, Allison? That's so, you haven't used that in like 20 years. It's been down in your basement, and we don't, family members usually, aren't the best partners right away in the decluttering process, because sometimes they tie shame and guilt. They weave that into the session. But I think having me or a professional come out, what that does is it really puts everything down on paper and it makes a plan. And I often say without a plan, you're just still walking around in circles in the same room. But if we can devise a plan and prioritize each space together and knock that out together, I will keep you accountable, or assign someone to keep them accountable that is really good at, not causing that shame or that judgment feeling for their decisions, because we never make any of our clients get rid of anything, and we never force that ever. So we just are guides, we're basically guides. And then once they decide, we are very quick to remove that item because they have made that decision. So that's why we always, a lot of professional organizers have SUVs or minivans because we want to just load it up as soon as you've decided, because when you keep looking at it, you may go, I could wear that sweater again. Or, that vase might be good in the spring. It's winter now. I mean, maybe I just got rid of it prematurely, So it's better if it's just out of sight. And, I have to tell you, they don't miss it once
Yeah.
it's gone. No one's ever called me and said, I really miss that pink sweater. No one's ever called me in 20 years. No one's ever called me and said, I wish I wouldn't have given that vase away. Darn it. Because we guide you through the right decision-making process so you don't regret it. And then we have all these tools and tricks to help you release and feel good about your decision.
All right. So for me, I'm sitting there thinking I should probably call you. No. I mean, as a woman, maybe you can relate, but I have several boxes of clothes that don't fit, thinking, oh, well, if I, unfortunately gain a few pounds, I'll have some clothes. Or if I, work out a little more, I'll need those ones that don't fit right now. So yeah, so I've got boxes of clothes that are one size too big and one size too small.
Well, that's pretty normal, by the way, to have one up and one down. I think what I see a lot of is more of like 2 and 3 sizes ago, or 2 and 3 sizes of hoping to go into, kind of thing. So I think one up, one down. And I always just say, like keep that prudent reserve, maybe keep, a couple of things in each of those sizes in case you do need them. So you're saving money and not, I mean, I am practical. I'm not a purist where I'm like, nope, only be the size you are right now. Because I am also a woman. I'm 54 years old, and I go up and down, a size, just one size. I'm either this size or that size typically.
Right.
Um, and I have said, well, these are this size, and I put them in one bin in the basement. And, I remember when I was on Weight Watchers years ago, they're like, don't do that. You should get rid of all of your bigger clothes as a motivational thing. And I remember going, uh-huh. But I also know that I have hormones and I have shifts and I enjoy vacations and I allow myself, to go up
To
a size.
fluctuate. Yeah.
Right. And that is the decision I made to do it. There are people that don't do it that way. And I think that's fine. I think it's about, can you store it in your home? It always boils down to, do you have the room to do this? Would that space with all those bigger or smaller clothes be served filling with something else that you're actually really excited about, doing more of, like if there's a hobby, that you want to get involved in, and those are blocking you from, then we would need to talk about it. And that's really what, to me is, clutter is just really, stuff that isn't serving you any longer for whatever reason. So I'd say pick out, your faves out of those sizes, and then just like anything else, pick out your faves and get rid of the others.
This is why talking to an outsider is always so helpful. Literally, just the process of bringing somebody into your home or into your space with new eyes can
Mhm.
help you see something with new eyes. And that works with photos too. I mean, I just came back from vacation. We're in the Galapagos. I took over 6,000 photos, right? A lot. Nobody needs 6,000 photos from the Galapagos, I can tell you that. But I unfortunately had a very, very, very long layover in Houston, so I pulled out my iPad and was looking through and starting to clean stuff out. And there was somebody else there who was also on a very, very, very long layover who was sitting near us, and he was sort of looking over my shoulder. And he's like, "Why do you have 16 photos of that one bird flying?" And I'm thinking at first, well, I'm on burst speed, I'm an amateur, blah, blah, blah. And he just points, he says, "I like that one." Right? So I pulled up that one. I was like, yeah, you know what? I like that one too. And I just deleted the rest because nobody needs
Yeah.
16 photos of a flying bird that all look literally exactly the same. And it's just a point of clarity that when you're looking at your own stuff, you
Yes.
can't see a lot of times the forest from the trees. But as soon as you have somebody looking over your shoulder or next to you, they can just, even if they don't say anything, just
Yeah.
literally having them there can
Yeah.
point out to you and make it clear, you know what? Why do I have 16 photos of that? Or why do I have, 10 shirts that are all 3 sizes bigger
Yeah.
than hopefully
Or
I'll
even
ever
like,
be again?
like I see it in a lot of like crock pots, but they have like the instant pot now, but they have two crock pots in the basement in case they need that. And I'm like, well, how often were you using the crock pot when you had the crock pot? They're like, oh, once or twice a month. And I'm like, so when was the time that you needed like three crock pots going at once? And they're like, never. And I'm like, let's just talk about that for a minute, and these are the conversations we have. And it does, am I walking out of that house with a crock pot that day from the basement that they don't use anymore that has an inch of dust on it? No. But what I've done is, to your point, Allison, kind of opened their eyes to what I see is something that could be serving another family. Once it's cleaned, it could be, you know, there could be a family that lost everything in a fire or don't have the money to buy that beautiful crock pot that only got used 3 times. So I make sure they understand that there's a social impact as well to their donations. And I take pictures of me at the donation center or delivering it to wherever they want it to go. I'll be like, you want that charity? No problem. Let's load it in the van and I will have pictures taken of me putting it on the shelves at the charity or wherever it is. And they're like, oh, cool. And, once they know where something is going and it's really going there, and it's going to be used by someone, it makes it a lot easier to release instead of it just being in the abyss of donation land.
Yeah. That also works if you have a teenager going to college, because I currently
Mm.
have mine going back to school tomorrow, and he's literally walking through the house right now saying, Mom, do you really need that slow cooker? Because I could use it at school.
There you
So
go.
there's another technique, but it's similar.
Yeah, no, it's like, here, do you need this for your apartment or your dorm or yeah. I used to love getting stuff from my parents, because I needed everything. I remember just having nothing, like nothing to do anything. And they'd be like, hey, do you want this set of pots and pans? I'm upgrading. I'm like, yes, I absolutely do.
I did
Um,
the same thing.
yeah, I took it. I had no pride. And some of the moms I work with are like, my kids don't want my stuff because it's not like
Current.
all the stuff on Instagram
Yeah.
or on TikTok, it's not the Caraway brand or whatever. And I'm like, well, I have a Revere pot from my mom that I still use to this day to make soup in. I mean, I probably pull it out of my cupboard maybe 3 times a week to use. It's my husband uses it all the time. It's just my little go-to, but it's from my mom's house that she discarded it when she was upgrading to her whatever Farberware. I don't know back then what it was, but I took it. I have no pride in I was happy to have whatever discards my parents gave me.
So for um, our audience, for myself, I'm sure for Allison, what would be some of your top tips for downsizing a home?
I always think, downsizing a home, but kind of keeping your lifestyle, right? So you can downsize possessions, but I always ask them, what activities do we need to take with us? And they're like, what do you mean activities? And I'm like, well, what do you guys like to do? And like, well, we like to, we have card night and I'm in a book club and, he likes to play golf and okay. And like, I find out all the stuff. I said, so that's 20% of what, you really, want to take with you other than your furnishings that, that'll fit. And we always do a space plan. If we know where they're going, plan, plan, plan. It's a big word of mine. I take
That means
measures.
you have to do math.
Yes. Well, I draw.
Sorry, Susan.
Yeah, I'm a hand drafter, but 2 people on my team use like a program to do it. But I hand draft everything, and then we have a magnet board so that the client can actually play tactically with where their furniture is going to go. So we talk about, kind of where are they going? What will they be doing there? Why did they choose that community, or why did they choose that particular house? And then I take those answers and I build the plan of attack. And we always just work with the easiest stuff first, with the things that don't really matter to them anymore. Get rid of that first phase. And then our second phase are the harder decisions. And that's getting into some of the things that, they're emotionally attached to. And then we get into all of the strategies to release those items if they're ready. If they're not ready, then, we wait till phase 3 when it's a couple weeks before the move. If they're making the transition, some people are just downsizing to age in place, but we always make a hard deadline for when we're going to get through everything. So even if there isn't a moving truck coming, I'll say, this could go on for years. While I'm happy to have your income, what I'm trying to do is, kind of shorten that time so that you can enjoy time in this house longer. So how can we make this house, manageable for you to have less stuff to manage, make it easy to navigate in, to have family over in, to cook in, to, still dance if you want to dance. How are we going to do this? So, downsizing isn't necessarily about moving, sometimes it's about just having a simplistic, enjoyable surrounding to have for as long as you can have it safely and enjoy it safely.
Where do the photographs fall in this plan you've just crafted?
Yeah, so it's funny because they always want it in phase 3, but I always put it in phase 1 because I'm like, we're going to need to do this kind of in tandem, like alongside of while we are decluttering your home, we're going to need to be organizing and decluttering some of your photographs and memorabilia. And what I like to do is work on those really big framed pictures that are covered in sheets in the basement, or that they took off the wall, the gallery wall from like when the kids were like 10 and now the kids are 50, and
The
they're just
graduation
the
portraits.
graduation portraits, the first dance recital portraits. Those are all very special portraits, but sometimes I'll get them hands-on working with me to take them out of the frames so that they feel that, they're kind of working alongside of me. Otherwise, I will happily take them back to our studio and do them. But I feel like they get more engaged, and we talk about the process of, selecting our favorites. And by them being that engaged in that phase one process, then they are also engaged not only in releasing the physical items out of their lives, but also becoming very astute at making decisions about the memorabilia that they're going to keep, the memorabilia that they're going to digitize and then discard, and then just memorabilia that they're just going to discard, like the children's like spelling test from second grade that they took every Tuesday. They kept every single one. Well, let's just keep one that has an A on it. I'm like, fine. We can do that. And that's the kind of stuff that's kind of fun, and it actually gets me closer to my client and builds the bond when I can do the organizing side by side with them. There is something to be said, of course, for working back in your own studio. But I feel that we lose something there. Sometimes, if we have the luxury of living in the same city as our client, I think there's a lot of opportunities there to marry that downsizing practice with the downsizing of the stuff that kind of backs up our memorabilia and photo pieces, and getting even rid of those big bulky frames and putting all of those bigger pictures in some type of a portfolio until they're ready to digitize. But it gives them another chance to go through those photos one more time and decide, oh my gosh, there's 3 of these. I didn't realize that. Or I have one big one. I don't need all these little wallets. I don't need. And once they become very intimate with their own collections of things, then it gets so much easier for them to help me when I'm finally ready to digitize and put them into a medium that they can enjoy.
So tell us a success story that you've had where organizing, really impacted their life.
Oh, there's
Like
so
just
many
one,
after 20 years.
I'm sure one will
Yeah,
float to the top.
yeah, yeah. So there was somebody that called me as a result of a referral. Their next door neighbor, we had downsized and moved this couple in Pittsburgh here, and it was successful. Everything went well, and she became a really big referral source and still is to this day. And about a year after I had moved this couple, I got a call from a woman, and she said, I'm Elaine, and you're not going to I'm not going to get rid of anything. I'm just telling you that right now. But we do need to move. And I've been in this house. I was born in this house. My when I married my husband, my parents sold us this house. So I've never left this house. And she was maybe in her late 70s at that time. And I said, wow. Okay. So I went over and did the consult. Turns out they're both lawyers. And they looked at my contract up and down, back and forth, and I was starting to sweat, worried that maybe, just maybe, I had not dotted an I or crossed a T, but they signed everything, and they, wanted to hear more about my services, and really kind of were grilling me, especially Elaine grilled me about exactly how I was going to pack her china and how I was going to do this, but just understanding that she wasn't going to get rid of anything because she had measured everything and it was going to fit in her new place. And I said, okay. And now I was starting to sweat even more, thinking, I hope she's good at measuring things.
So she
And
wasn't downsizing to a smaller place,
well,
or
no,
was she? Oh,
it
okay.
was more of a lateral move. They're moving to an apartment, but
Okay.
it gets better. So they signed the paperwork, and Elaine tells Carl to go get his checkbook, and Carl shuffled off to go get his checkbook, and he came back to the table, and he says, we're just gonna do a retainer. Puts a very large amount out there to me, and my sweat stopped immediately and was replaced with something else. I don't know. It just like, I was like, oh my God, I hope I can make sure everything fits. So this is a sight unseen thing. So I go pack, bring my team, we pack, they buy us lunches every day, very sweet couple. And I said, is there any way I could just see the new place, before we get in, just to peruse it? They're like, yeah. Of course, of course, of course. So I go over there, and of course it's spacious and this whole thing. And she says, all right, Jill, now that all the boxes are coming over next week, I want you to tell me exactly where everything's going to go. And I said, okay, where did you think everything was going to go? I started with that question, and she told me, well, the pantry's for food, and I was like, that's adorable, that's very cute, but we had this banter at this point because we'd been together now for a couple of weeks. This one was a very large home we were packing up, and again, I was getting day by day more anxious. But what was beautiful about this story is twofold. One, when we got in there, she gave me complete carte blanche. She said, you're in charge. I've measured everything. I know it's going to fit. You take that beautiful brain and you make me a new home. And she was nearby, but she let me do my thing. She let me play in my space, and she let me be creative and buy all of the organizing goodies. And I know this building, people would stop me and go, oh, are you the organizer? She says that you found a space for every single thing she kept, and she loves your wicker baskets with the names on them in her guest closet, and in her hall closet, there's a space for the umbrella, Jill. And they were so sweet. This is like a high-rise place, a very nice high-rise here in Pittsburgh. And I became so popular in that building because I found bins for every single one of Elaine's objects that we went probably to every apartment in that apartment building by the time, in the last, 10 years. But she had just retired from being a lawyer, and she didn't go to law school when she was 50. And we ended up doing her entire retirement memorabilia book of her whole life. Not just, as a lawyer, but before. We made a personal book and a regular, career book. And we ended up they kept giving us more, how it goes. They keep giving you more and more projects and more projects. And we were making volumes of memory books. And when she passed away, just a few years after that, it was very sad. They put all those books out and I felt like we were such a big part of her life. And now he called me, and I had to downsize that apartment, after she passed away, because he is happily engaged to be married. I believe he is 80, and his betrothed is about 75. And I moved him out of that apartment, and I downsized him, and we cried together.
Aw, what a sweet story. I
And
know it touches you very
yeah,
much.
yeah. And we organized his new home in his spaces. His new bride to be was like, I will organize from now on with this thing. And he looked at me and he goes, just do my library and my office. You know how I like it. And so that's what I did. But we placed those memory books on those bookshelves in his office, and
Nice.
we hugged and cried a lot. So, these are full circle clients for a lot of things. And we actually made a beautiful legacy video of his life for him. And he pulled objects before we disposed of them. And he talked about his life with Elaine. And that video is in the vault here in my office, and it's on the cloud, and it's on the event of his passing. His children will get that. And I feel very honored to be a part of his life, and his life with Elaine as well. So
That's a fantastic story. Wow.
he was a lot. It was a lot of, yes, there's a lot of emotional success with that story as well, Allison. Yeah.
I could see that. I could see it from your face and just listening to you tell the story.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you get into this business, you don't really always realize how you've changed your clients' life by the services that you offer.
Right.
You think, you're just digitizing a few photos or creating a little book for them.
Oh, no, you're doing
Yeah.
way more. You're giving them a voice, and you're giving them the opportunity to pull things out of their history and out of, you know, kind of their emotional memory bank as well, not just their memory bank. Like, I got married on this date. And then our job is usually to say, tell me more about that day. What was the weather like? What did your bridesmaids wear? Tell me about what it was like getting ready. We ask those questions. We don't just plunk down a wedding picture and say date of marriage. We always want to know more, because there always is a lot more.
Yeah. There's always a story.
Always a story.
Always a story. So tell us this, because we ask this of everybody.
Mhm.
What is the strangest photo in your collection and the story behind it?
Okay. Well, in my own collection, I would say the strangest story or strangest photo is of me at a cooking class in Florida. And actually, it was just a couple of years ago. I mean, there's funny pictures of me like wearing costumes as a kid, or, as my mother would say, that's what you wore on a Friday night. That wasn't a costume. There's things like that. Um, Whatever, mom. But I would say it's a picture of me at a cooking class. I'm wearing an apron and I'm presenting a meal like that I made. And I will say that is strange because I am not a cook. I am not a chef. Um, and I was alone on this. It was a surf trip, and my husband had flown down, but he plays poker. He's really good at it, and he was off at a tournament somewhere in Florida, and I refused to sit home, so I went on Airbnb experiences. And I said, what's the one thing that would take me out of my comfort zone? And believe me, if you polled anyone that knows me, they're like, Jill went to a cooking class. So I would say the strangest photo in my collection is me going to this gourmet cooking class. I took copious notes, about how to make chicken. I'm not a good cook. I'm surprised my children have survived. They're alive. I know I fed them meals. I don't, I mean, we only went to McDonald's every now and then, like when I was guilted and stuff, but I cook, but I think I just cook really basic things. I made this dish that, I don't remember the name of it, but it was an amazing dish and it tasted delicious. And, it was kind of in a sketchy part of town, and Uber driver didn't want to leave me there. And I was very brave, and I went in and I had this experience all by myself with this chef. And there was this woman that came later, with her friend. And they were just mostly there to drink and stir things. But I really wanted to learn how to make something gourmet and be proud of it. And so every time my husband sees that picture of me wearing the apron, he's like, that just is so out of context for me. And I'm like, stop it. It's bad. But that's not my thing. I'm just not that person. But that night I was a chef. And that night I did something very brave that I would never normally do. So I would say it's probably not a strange picture to me, but if people that loved me and know me saw it, they'd be like, what are you wearing? Is that food in front of you? Are you in a kitchen? So yeah, that would be it.
I
And I
love it.
have
Have you ever made
it.
the dish again?
No, 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 I have not. In fact, I use that picture because it's so strange. I actually use it as my ID. So like, the new iPhone, you have to pick your picture to go with your contact. I've actually used that to inspire me to cook more, and I have been cooking more. I've been cooking more. I bought myself 2 cookbooks for Christmas, and I've made 3 or 4 dishes out of it. And that very strange picture has turned out to be a motivational sort of gauntlet thrown down of I'm going to learn how to make things that have more than 4 ingredients this year. That's my big intention this year, is to make tasty food that is interesting. And
Nice.
I'm doing it slowly but surely. And on the weekends. Because I don't
So,
have time during the week.
so when Susan and I take a drive through Pittsburgh, should that ever
Yes,
happen, will you cook us something?
I will. I will cook you. I will practice before you come. It's not a strength of mine, but it will taste good because I will have practiced on my husband and my son, who lives a few blocks back. He'll pop over and he'll taste test everything. He loves doing that for me. If I'm making something new. So
It's always so fascinating to hear of people's preferences and you know uh, things that they uh, do easily and other things that don't come so easily to them.
yep.
So, I see that little surfboard back there. I know you're a surfer, and that is something that did not come easily to me when I was in Hawaii. So, the fact that, I'd rather be in the kitchen personally than on a surfboard. So we all have our different talents, but, kudos to you for taking that and sort of wrestling your demons and saying,
Yeah,
I can change how I feel about cooking.
I can, and I am. It's a whole new mindset. That class turned my head, around to that. And it was, it was recent too. And it made me, when I saw the picture of me doing it, it made me think I can do this. The photograph says I can. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It
It's
says,
proof.
yeah, it's proof that I did this with very little coaching, and he was very proud of me. And one of the other pictures is him standing behind me, just very proud, this chef, and so it was a fun night for me to be uh, out of my comfort zone.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jill, for joining us today. I learned a lot, as I always do. And I know you. I've met you. We've talked many times, and I still learned all of this new information about you, which I love. It's one of the reasons why we do this. So we really, really appreciate you coming on today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure seeing you guys and talking to you. I'm so glad we're seeing each other on Zoom too. I know this is a podcast, but I get the gift of seeing your faces, and that's a gift for me. So thank you.
Well, I know we're going to probably see you in our spring conference
Yes, I'll be
for
there.
our organization. And so, yeah. And we want to wish you the very best for this year
Thank you.
and keep up the great work.
Oh, thank you. You both too. I love your podcast. Keep going.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jill.
All right. See you. Bye-bye.
So it was so nice to have Jill on our podcast so that we could dive in a little bit more deeply into her background, which is, as you just heard, quite extensive. I was fascinated by all the different services that she offers and how she really does practice supporting her clients in their ability to let go of things and also allowing them to keep their stuff if they want to, like totally not pressuring people, just supporting them, which is, I think, says a lot from her background on social work and how you handle your clients and organizing is an emotional task. Don't you agree? It was just fascinating.
I do. I love her approach with the cars. Your first car, you get, I don't remember exactly what she said, but your first car, you get that little Fiat, and an hour and what's going to go in it. And then your
Right.
second car is the Ford Focus, and you've got one helper and an additional hour. And then the third is the big container, and you've got helpers. And I think it really helps you think about and focus on what is the stuff that is most important to you? What do you really want to save when it comes down to it? But knowing that you don't have to get rid of everything, and you have time to go through your things, and just because you're moving or you're downsizing or you're cleaning out your photographs, you don't have to have okay, I'm going to keep 100. You don't need to. You can keep 200 or 500 or 6,000 because everybody's different. But something about the way she described that with the cars made it very real for me. I could picture it in my head.
Well, it was a great analogy to causing you to really quickly visualize what's important. Just brass tacks, like you've got an hour, what are you throwing into the car? And I think we all knew that photos usually goes into that first car, which is what truly would be the thing that goes in, my Fiat for me,
Absolutely. That didn't surprise me at all. I do think that actually can come in a couple different ways. So for some people, that would be all the old albums and the boxes. But for people who have moved into more digital, it should be that little hard drive. Even if your stuff's backed up in the cloud, grab that little drive with all of your photos that we've talked about so many times on the show. And that doesn't surprise me at all that goes in the Fiat. And I will just say, once you're organized, that if you do have it all in a little drive, that leaves your Fiat open to bring a whole lot more stuff than if you have to put in all the albums and the boxes. Just a little plug for getting your stuff organized and ready. But I also think she really drove home that it can be very, very helpful to have a second set of eyes on your things, or just somebody that is asking you questions that you need to answer. That's not mom or dad or a partner or cousin or a friend, because they see things differently. And just the process of you talking to them makes you see things differently. So can be a great help if you're downsizing or making decisions for whatever reason you need to make these decisions.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. It's a lot to think about. And especially as you age, and the fact that she went from home organizing now to senior moves sort of gives her that whole life cycle for someone, as they age out and they need to relocate and downsize, and, keeping your legacy in mind, what are the things that you're going to hang on to or repurpose. And that might be the good time that you start identifying things using some of the other software tools or apps that we've talked about. How do you preserve those memories of things that you no longer want to keep?
It's certainly a theme that we have on this show that we talk about a lot. And we will obviously put all of Jill's contact information in case you want to reach out to her in our show notes at www.insidephotoorganizing.com. So you can see them there. And hopefully this helps some people, or at least enjoyed, I hope you enjoyed listening to it, because I sure did.
And again, for anyone that's out there listening, if you've got any questions for us, we're happy to answer those on our next podcast. So hop out to insidephotoorganizing.com and leave us a comment. And also check us out on your favorite podcast. And we'd appreciate any reviews so that we can get more people interested in this very important topic.
For sure. Thank you, Susan. It's always a pleasure. I love our meetings, and I look forward to doing this again next month.
Sounds good. Until then. That's it for our show today. Remember, you can find this episode on all of your favorite podcast apps. Be sure to click follow so you can stay up to date with the latest in photo organizing. We'll catch you next month.